Okay, everyone, welcome to a very special edition, I guess, of the Young IPA podcast. So we've got a fair few members of the Institute of Public Affairs team with us on the call. I kind of look like I'm in a David Lynch film because I'm moving at the moment. So this is just like the one place that isn't filled with boxes, but we're going to press on with that. So we've got
G'day
Gregory
everyone,
also
thank
here.
you so much. James, you're going to sing the intro music. There's no tunes to start off the day, so maybe if you could just give us a whirl, that would be great,
As
mate.
long as you can also provide the dance moves. We've also got Gideon Rozner, Director of Policy.
They're on mute like a pair of boomers, Dara and Gideon, so looks like, old Rexy's one step ahead on the technology.
Did you see the stylish?
There it is.
Great to be here, friends. Now I might be a bit quieter than I usually am. I've been told that they're hearing my voice on the main stage. So this will be subdued Rozner, which isn't an everyday phenomenon.
Might be the most Gideon Rozner thing I've ever heard in my life. And we've also got research fellow here at the IPA, Dara McDonald.
I'm just chiming in. I'm an accidental blow-in.
Now, Dara, you're in quarantine right now. Were you able to jump over a border before Victoria closed down fully?
I was. Hence why I'm now mandated to stay, by myself for the next 2 weeks.
Where are you,
so I
Dara?
don't infect anyone. I've got Victorian cooties.
I think that's what the official name is now.
Yeah.
There's a few people already getting involved in the chat, which is really good. So this is going to be a bit of a looser setup as a breakout room. I'm sure you've been hearing a lot of really amazing speeches all day, and this might be a bit of a good chance for you guys to get involved in the chat, ask the IPA some questions as well. Dara, we've already got one from Mark saying very good articles in The Spectator recently, so big win for Dara already. And Pete is apparently looking very sharp from Simons. So,
I'm getting that framed. Thank you very much for that shout out, Esperini.
now, I'm sure a lot of people already know about the IPA who are in the chat, but maybe for people that aren't as aware, maybe if they're coming to it just from a different panel, the IPA is a think tank. We've been working for free speech and free society now for like over 75 years. So this is one of the times, very good, Gideon. This is one of the strangest times in human history, and one of the most important times I would feel for people to keep making the case for individual liberties and keep making the case for free markets, because not only are we seeing weird things happening right now, but we're seeing weird things happening for the next couple of months and maybe even years. So I guess my first question to the rest of you guys is, how do you see the role of the IPA through coronavirus? So I might start with Gideon.
Well, as usual, the IPA is saying what needs to be said, and we're one of the few voices in Australia that's saying it. As many of you on the call may know, the IPA was the first organisation in Australia to come out in a meaningful way against the lockdown. We did it very early in April when job losses were already mounting. We were seeing the horrible vision of people lining up around the block for Centrelink, which is something I hope to never see again for the rest of my life. When I fronted the video that the IPA put out, and that was me marching around Melbourne in a suit, talking about how bad the lockdown was, and of course I got slagged off by every mean person and their dog on Twitter, and so people saying I wanted to kill grandma and so on. But my email, every inbox of every social media platform I'm on was just flooded with people saying, thank you. You are saying what we can't say. And that's a role that the IPA plays very often. The reason why IPA content and Sky News content and right-wing opinion content is so popular is because people need to hear out loud, and they're very reassured to hear out loud what they can't say to their family, what they can't say to their friends, what they can't say at their workplace. So what we really need to be doing is talking about why the government response to the coronavirus outbreak has caused much more damage than the virus itself, and importantly, be part of the conversation on how to rebuild Australia when this wretched thing is all over.
Yeah, you talked a lot about the criticisms that video got, but I think it got more praise and criticisms, at least on some of the feedback that I was seeing, and it also led to a lot of memberships. And this is something I want to bring up right now, which is that the IPA, we're really excited for Friedman to be going on. So the IPA is handing out a very special membership deal for virtual attendees of the Friedman conference. If you go to ipa.org.au, at the end of this session, don't go now, we're still going, but at the end of the session, if you go to ipa.org.au and use the promo code Friedman with your membership, for just $55, you get 12 months of IPA membership and receive a free copy of Dave Rubin's Don't Burn This book. So yeah, head to ipa.org.au/join, enter that promo code and take up the offer. So Pete, what do you reckon coronavirus has meant for the role of the IPA?
Well, James, everyone is so risk averse in today's day and age, like people want to limit risk, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but as soon as it's like, oh, there's a pandemic coming, so many people just naturally go, okay, let's close down everything forever because dying of coronavirus would be the worst thing that's ever happened to anyone. So it's important that the IPA just clicks, sort of just picks away at that idea and gives people, the opportunity to think and maybe like, yeah, maybe the cost for that way, the benefit, things like that. Obviously, the expert thing's massive in all this. Like, it's just purely based on, oh, well, the science says this, so we're going to do it. So to be able to sort of bring in different modelling and things like that, and different research and evidence and things like that from other parts of the world, and say, well, actually, no, in this part of the world, we've got a study that shows this, blah, blah, blah. Just because we know that experts think the same thing and all have the same viewpoints. So to be able to sort of eat away at that idea is another important thing that the IPA does. But yeah, just give a voice to people who are thinking, because not ordinary people out there, they've got their own lives, they've got their own concerns. They kind of know that there's something wrong with what is being done, but I always feel like the role of the IPA and other organisations at this conference is, to give people the evidence and the ideas that their instincts are telling them. They kind of know there's something wrong with this, but then they need, something to tell their friends and family and things like that, in addition to what they already know. So I guess it's just supplying people with that ammunition in a sense.
Yeah, Dara, I'll bring you in here because I know you talked about some of the civil liberties that we're losing in an article in The Spectator Australia recently. So do you want to talk about, because Pete and Gideon have kind of hit on the economic side of what we're doing, but I thought you spoke really well about the civil liberties.
Yeah, I think it sets a really quite a dangerous precedent in the sense that, it's not just this lockdown. If even in Victoria at the moment, you're going through a second lockdown, which was really kind of inevitable, considering that a second wave was kind of inevitable given this, the tactic that we chose to suppress the virus and, delay the cases over a time. So, the fact that we decided to flatten the curve mean that we're going to have a second wave regardless of what happened. And now we're seeing the effects of basically what that meant. And the fact that we're having a second lockdown in Victoria is, again, another incident of where, our civil liberties have been taken away again, and particularly with the towers, that really was quite a significant incident in the sense that, actually having people barricaded into their apartments was a completely, I think, a completely overreaction to what was happening, basically. So, on one hand, you can say, well, they didn't know what they were dealing with, so of course we overreact because of the precautionary principle. But then this obviously sets a precedent that every time that something happens, then we go, oh, well, we have to overreact and we have to take away our, civil liberties, and we have to police to this extent. So I think it was a very dangerous precedent in how it was taken away.
Those towers to me seemed like a bit of a turning of the tide on people's attitudes towards civil liberties, because I think, most of my friends are quite left-wing, and they seem to really think that because coronavirus was such an issue, they weren't too concerned about people losing civil liberties, and there was the case of, hang on, we have to do this or grandma dies. But when those lockdown towers came in and people got really sad about some of Australia's most vulnerable people literally being confined to home, they can't leave for no matter what, and then the government just stuffing up simple things like making sure they have enough food, I think now people are starting to really wake up to the threat this poses to civil liberties, and the fact that we can't really rely on the government to provide a lot of the things that we would expect they're going to if they are going to take away people's right to just walk around.
Can I chime in very briefly, Bolt? I agree with you to a point. I think there are a lot of people who are now being awakened by what frankly is the most gross violation of human rights that we've ever seen on Australian soil, which is what's happening to those towers. But I'm disappointed that we haven't seen the critical mass of people go down that line of thinking. And by that I mean, you know, I saw a piece in the on the ABC just a few minutes ago before I joined this, talking about the real story of the Nine Towers and how happy people are in there. And they quoted some bloke as saying he's never had so much meat in his life. Just patently false stuff. I mean, if this was being done by a coalition government, then you would not hear the end of it. Justifiably so, I might add. You know, Antifa would be marching down there with crowbars and bolt cutters, and I'd probably be joining them. But because this is happening under Daniel Andrews, who has done all of this without any democratic mandate or consultation or anything else, with the utmost of cruelty, people turn on people like us for speaking out against it, saying that we're being irresponsible for critiquing lockdown and not taking it seriously. This just rams home to me how authoritarian the left has become. They have taken over the system, such as it is, so much that they worship the system, and now they're almost proto-fascistic. So it's a very interesting fault line that's arising between skeptics of the lockdown, like you and me, and evangelists of the lockdown, like most of the mainstream media. It has strong parallels, I might add, to the climate change debate. You know, the expertocracy telling us all what to do for our own good.
Right.
Can I just chime in here?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm completely triggered by the fact Gideon's speaking so softly. Why is that, Gideon?
How many times do you have to explain it, mate?
Yeah, as I said, I'm in the Melbourne studio and I'm upstairs from the main stage, and I've been told off for speaking too loud. They're actually picking me up on the main stage microphone. So as I said on the chat, I've been told to keep it down more times than Anne Frank up here. So yeah, it's not easy being Rozner.
I know, this is a different side to Gideon, the subdued one, but at least we're vaping, so there's some sense of normality.
I've never spoken before.
So we've had a whole lot of people join the chat recently, so join the Zoom hangout, I guess, recently. So make sure you're getting in the chat, because we want you guys to be as much a part of this as we are. So I saw a question up there a while ago which related to masks. So in Victoria right now, it does seem to be the case that the government's now really pressing that masks should be basically not mandatory, but strongly encouraged, which is not the same sort of messaging we were getting. Like, it was like lockdown, and now it's masks. And so it's the fact that the narrative keeps changing like this, are people losing their faith in the government to keep on top of coronavirus?
Is that to me, Bold?
Yeah, you go.
To the panel.
Look, I actually support the wearing of masks. I don't necessarily support making it mandatory, but to me, masks should have been a first resort, not a last resort. The debate around masks to me is such a great example of the expertocracy getting it so very, very wrong. They told us black and blue that masks make no difference, when as a matter of common sense, they would do at least something, and told us not to wear them. Instead, they wrecked our entire economy as a first resort. It's like crushing a car into a cube because it's unsafe, rather than trying to install seatbelts in it.
Yeah, I'm with you. And then the way that the World Health Organization say that asymptomatic spread isn't normal, and then it doesn't travel on surfaces as much as we were led to in the previous. I mean, it's this kind of knee-jerk decision-making over and over again, just that really is why I think this lockdown won't be, I don't know, as listened to and as accepted as the first one. I think people are going to really start to push back a bit. Gideon, Pete and Dara, do you have any thoughts?
You go, Dara.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that people are going to lose their patience, particularly with the sheer amount of incompetence that we've seen from the Andrews government, particularly the fiasco with the security guards at the hotels. I mean, this is like sheer incompetence, and now every Victorian is paying for, by having to reclose their businesses and go through this entire painful ordeal again because of this incompetence. So yeah, I think people are going to lose their patience the second time round. This is not the first time round where we're excusing lack of knowledge. This is the second time round. And even like the trends that you see. So if you look at like public transport data and Google data as well, before the lockdowns came in Australia, the legal lockdowns that is, that people were starting to stay home, people were starting to, the traffic was starting to taper off. But now you can see it starting to pick up. So in any way, the lockdowns were following human behaviour the first time around, and now they're going counter to human behavior at the moment. So, you know, I think people are going to lose patience.
Pete, do you have anything to say to that? I know you also have a question from the audience of your own.
I don't have much to add to that conversation except the fact that we need to learn to live with this thing, because, you know, this lockdown, the thing that gets me is what happens after 6 weeks when it spikes back up again. Do we then go back into lockdown again? Like, it'll go on forever. And so ways that we can learn to live with this, if that includes masks, I'm no mask expert, then that's great as well. But yeah, we need to learn to live with this, and because it might be years until we get a vaccine. Yes, I did have a question from long-time listener Fritter, who a few of you might know Fritter. I mentioned him a bit on the show. He loves the show. He's actually watching the footy at the moment, and the footy comes first for Fritter. I said, Fritter, you know, I know you're not going to watch tonight. If you've got a question for us, that'd be great. And he said, Dan Andrews is a expletive. Right, this is over message. And I said, Fritter, that we can't say swear words on air, and also that's a statement, not a question. So he goes, yeah, fair enough, mate.
Where's the question?
The question is,
Fritter's got the right idea.
So Fritter goes, and I said, you know, there's probably going to be people from all over the world watching this. You know, it's not just Victoria. We want something international. So he said, okay, fine. Why is the CCP full of such bullies? Except he didn't say bullies, but I changed it to bullies because this is a family podcast. So it's an interesting question. I'll throw it to Gideon, because Gideon's, you know, head of policy. So director of policy. So, you know,
on a good day.
This is his area.
Yeah, it should be.
Go for it.
Yeah, well, the question is, why are they such bullies? Look, why indeed? I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with Xi Jinping. I think he's the Adolf Hitler of the 21st century, to be perfectly honest with you. And by that, I don't mean he's as bad as Hitler, at least not yet, although he is putting sections of his population in concentration camps. I don't think he's killing them en masse just yet. But the point is, you have an authoritarian power that's very industrially advanced and has clear territorial ambitions, as disclosed with its treatment of Hong Kong, the militarization of the South China Sea, the skirmishes along the Indian border. These are people who do not respect the liberal democratic order, the rules-based order, or indeed liberal democratic ideals, and they want to emerge as a growing superpower. The rules and the concepts with which we in the West have been playing ever since the end of the Second World War, or at the very least the end of the Cold War, are not just anathema to these people, they're positively anti the party's ideology. And that's why, you know, I'm critical of ScoMo as much as the next right-wing ratbag, but I will say that his decision on Hong Kongers could be probably, if not the, his finest hour. I think it's such an important decision to give oppressed Hong Kongers safe haven here in Australia. They will make a huge contribution to this country, and you know, on a lighter note, I'm hoping that they'll turn the Bourke Street Mall here in Melbourne into Lang Kwai Fong. But look, this is the great geopolitical struggle of our times, and you know, again, I'm not a big fan of massive government spending, but the $250 billion we just threw on military equipment, I think is necessary. The problem is we're going to probably, you know, with our past form, pay through the nose for military hardware that doesn't work all that well.
Yeah.
So
would you say that's your official title, Gideon, right-wing ratbag?
Oh, one of many. Check my Twitter account, baby. Gideon C. Rozner.
Yeah, we should crowdsource your next job title from the Twitter replies. I'm with you in a sense. I think this is just the natural inclination of totalitarian politics. I mean, don't forget how beautiful it is that we live in a system which really prioritizes individual above anything else. So once you start getting into people as classes that just, and you let your ideology go from there, when you're at the top of the chain, like the CCP is, and you can separate people that love the party and people that hate the party, and whoever you can put into that other, if you just rob them of their humanity and you rob them of their rights, I mean, this is just, China's just following Stalinist Russia, China's following, as you say, Nazi Germany, and fascist Italy. I mean, they're communist in name only. This is just totalitarian governments through history are able to find the enemies of society and just keep killing to keep themselves in power. And I think this is just the natural way things go.
It's actually, and I'll tell you what, it is at its margins, Bolt. It is the extreme and logical conclusion of identity politics. It's the one group versus another. It's the loyalty to the group, unquestioning loyalty to the group, and anybody outside that is in the West cancelled, and in mainland China thrown into as I said, a concentration camp.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I might just bring Dara in here because I've been hogging.
Oh, no, I probably would just echo those points. I think that's exactly right, that they're a totalitarian government, basically. The CCP is just after control, basically. And I think a lot of, they have huge ambitions to become the new quote unquote world order, in the sense that they've taken a lot of Western ideas to some degree, like we have free markets kind of, but with Chinese flavor, which basically means bugger all. Am I allowed to say that? Probably not.
Go ahead. You've said it. There's no edit button.
But yeah, this is what they were. They're basically trying to take the apps, the killer apps, if you want to take Neil Ferguson's phrase, which created Western prosperity, and put some Chinese flavor on top of it, so that it maintains this totalitarian form, but it creates this massive industrial power, which can power them. What they're hoping is that it will make them, the new kind of superpower of the world.
I think 3 very good answers, but I'm sure Fred is only keen for one person's answer. So, Pete, what do you reckon it's down to?
Fred loves a good saber rattling session. Like he's a bit of a hawk when it comes to the CCP. No, I think the interesting thing about the CCP is what happens next. We spoke to Greg Sheridan on the Young IPA podcast a few weeks ago, and he sort of talked about how these things change. So China changes when the ruling elites in China get a little bit sick of the bloke that is in charge at the moment. And it'd be interesting to see what happens over the next few years, because COVID will smash their economy as well. And not just COVID, but all the not just the disease itself, but all the lockdowns they've been doing will smash their economy as well. We know their economy has been slowing down over the last few years. So it'd be interesting to see what happens as it becomes a little bit more difficult for China itself. Will we see a change in direction? Will we see a change in leadership? Potentially more dangerous as they start to go downhill as a nation. So something we have to look at. I wanted to also touch on a point that Sam McClellan just made. Sam, if you want to throw accusations around, that are baseless and have no grounding in truth, Sam said, put some pants on, Peter. And I want you to know, Sam, that I am absolutely wearing pants. And that's all there is to it.
Well, that's a world first.
It is tempting. It is tempting with the podcast to just not bother with strides, but my house is actually really cold. So that's the main reason. And also, I take this seriously, Gideon. I dress my best for this kind of stuff.
Right on. It's a pants occasion.
That's it.
All right, brilliant. Keep the questions / Peter Gregory slander coming in the chat, please, because I love both. But I might throw this because we've got a lot of people here, IPA members, maybe they listen to the podcast as well, that would definitely know our work, but maybe not the people we are. So I don't know, something we like to do on the podcast with some of our guests is talk about, we've got a request that Pete stands up to prove once and for all that he is wearing pants. So I don't know if you want to feed into the trolls. This is kind of, yep, they are confirmed pants, all right?
They're trackies, but they are pants.
All right, so what I'm thinking is maybe we ask people on the show how they came to support the ideas of liberty and what their background is. So maybe we could go around the panel and do that ourselves. So I might start with Dara. So Dara, how did you come to the ideas of free markets, free speech, and so on?
Well, I have a bit of a road to Damascus conversion. I'm back in northern New South Wales at the moment, where I grew up, my hometown in Nimbin. I definitely didn't grow up a libertarian. I grew up as a kind of a hippie, which went to a neo-humanist school. And so I grew up in this very kind of left-wing milieu, but kind of a libertine left, if that makes sense. And then I went to university in Melbourne, and it was at the time when the Andrew Bolt case came up, the Section 18C, and I was studying law at the time. And despite the fact that I had this left-wing slant, I was very much pro freedom of speech, and I could see that this, Section 18C was a bad thing, and which put me in, quite significant odds with other lefties at the university. So I was starting to have this kind of, you know, a few pennies were dropping here and there, and particularly around freedom of speech. And then I went off to London and spent a year and a half in London, as you do as an Australian, and you finished your your degree, you go off and spend a year overseas. And that was kind of the, I was there for, the Greek debt crisis, the migrant crisis, and the Brexit vote. So I had like the holy trinity of, experiences, political experiences, which brought me around. I usually say that I left Australia reading The Guardian, and I came back reading The Spectator. So that was kind of my road to Damascus conversion. And when I got back to Australia, I was looking for a job and just had some time to read and listen and equate myself with these new ideas. And that's how I sort of I started digging into this sort of libertarian ideology and ideas. And yeah, that was the kind of where I felt like I fit in terms of what I was thinking and how I view the world.
You had a very...
And then, now I work for the IPA.
Very cool. Awesome. You have a very different...
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, Dara is the first person ever in the history of the world to go to Melbourne Uni and then to be filled with free market dreams once she got there. And London. Like, London's, the centre of the left-wing world. So, congratulations, Dara, on that.
We've got a question here from Simon for you, Dara. On a scale of 1 to telling your colleague you love them at the end of a phone call, how awkward are Christmas lunches with your lefty family and friends?
What is that reference to?
Well, I've sort of converted. I've converted my mum. My dad's still very much a lefty Greens voter from Lismore. But yeah, actually, he's fairly tolerant. When I told him I was going to work for the IPA, he was like, "Oh, at least you're using your brain." So that's, I think, the kind of the old school lefties, they're at least tolerant of ideas and actually want to discuss, which is something that, SJWs don't have.
Yeah, you had a different post-uni experience to me. You went to London for a year. I started full-time work at the IPA the next day. I think it was basically from that afternoon onwards. I got my degree and I went straight to work. Gideon, we'll go to you. So what was your path towards freedom and liberty?
But this is a bit like the supervillain origin story segment of the show. Everybody sort of how everybody became so evil and right wing. Look, I don't have a road to Damascus story at all. The immortal words of Lady Gaga, I was born this way. I was a political nerd with strong right wing leanings basically since I was about 14 or 15 years old. I joined the Liberal Party on my 16th birthday because I was clearly the coolest kid on the playground, and then I went to Melbourne University also, and I got really involved in Liberal students. In fact, James Patterson and I joined the Melbourne Uni Liberal Club on the same day during our first week of uni and became best friends ever since. And I also, met Liberal students from all around. And, back in those days, the Liberal student movement was very, very, quite libertarian. It was a broad church, but had a very strong libertarian leanings. I met people like, the godfather of the Australian Liberty movement, Tim Andrews, and a whole lot of people who are, still my best friends to this day. Then I graduated for my sins with a law degree, which basically they give out in Wheaties boxes these days in this country. I went to practice law and absolutely hated every minute of it. I tried doing the real job thing, got out after 3 harrowing years, and bounced around politics in various forms, and finally washed up at the IPA on a day week, and absolutely loved it. And really now in what I do, I feel like I've got the best job in Australia. I get to talk about politics and libertarian and right-wing thought all day long. It never gets old.
Yeah, I don't love the idea of the IPA as like the last port that getting washed up as. More of like the natural conclusion. The natural conclusion to the incubating.
The peak and pinnacle.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Pete, and what's your background?
Yeah, well, I'm an ex-lefty as well. My family's all sort of soft left, like Dara said. They're not sort of hippies in Nimbin, but they're just normal soft left. And it's all, I sort of empathise with that weirdness. Like, they're sort of proud of me because I'm, doing a job, and I've got a job, so they're proud of me. And they sort of, they said, oh, that's nice, Pete, but they don't really understand what it is that I do and the positions that I take. And I just think there's a certain age group, middle-aged lefties who watch the ABC all day don't understand what the modern left is like at all. They're just kind of like, oh, you know, rich people should pay taxes and we should look after the environment. They don't realise that there's like a Stalinist takeover of our institutions underway. But I became not a lefty when I went overseas. So I used to work at World Vision, and I used to work at a place called the Small Enterprise Foundation in South Africa. And so that's sort of microfinance for poor people. And I was just like, I just sort of remember thinking, why don't they have, like, it was so much better if they built a massive coal mine next to these villages, because then all the people could work there. And everyone else was like, what? And I just remember, like, the people in the village were saying, oh, you know, my son has gone down to Johannesburg to work in the mines because there's heaps of jobs there. And it's, you know, that's why, and there's heaps of money there. There's no money here. And I just realised that the government was crap, and that what they needed was heaps and heaps of jobs and heaps of economic growth, and they would be fine. So that was when I sort of started to think more about free market stuff. And then basically I just played soccer with Roscom, and I needed the job, so I started working at the IPA and just got spammed with free market dreams all day, and here I am, hosting a podcast with young James. But yeah, no, I think about the parents is interesting. And I noticed a few people in the chat have also said that they used to be ex-lefties, so it's an interesting thing. I don't think many people go the other way.
Can I say though, there's nobody I love more than ex-lefties, because I think it really does show somebody who's genuinely a free thinker, and who may, for perfectly understandable reasons, have one set of ideals, but not be so above their wedding to an ideology that they can actually question things. It's the reverse of Jeremy Corbyn, who was like an undergraduate, trot, and basically stayed that way throughout his entire political career, not even realising that the very regimes he supported had murdered people by the millions.
Yeah,
and the point is, I don't think my values have changed. Like, I still care about free expression, I care about poor people, and I care about the environment, and all the things that my parents brought me up to care about is better exemplified. I don't like to say the right, but like the free market, the liberal, libertarian kind of worldview.
Yeah, I'm completely with you. I mean, I've always, I can stop my socialist friends in the tracks when they go, why do you think what you think? And I say, because I genuinely care about poor people, and I genuinely care about individual rights, which culturally seems to be connotated with left-wing thought. But I mean, just have a basic look at the history of the 21st century, where you introduce free market ideas, life for poor people becomes better. When you introduce civil liberties like freedom of speech, people have more freedom to get from the government. It's just the natural way that things go. Yeah. I guess my background, I mean, I'm pretty sure everyone would know this by now, but, being Andrew Bolt's son, you don't really get much of a choice in being left-wing when you're a kid.
I didn't realise you were Andrew Bolt's son.
Raised by Australia's greatest political arguer. So I would say it becomes more libertarian as things gone on. I mean, that's sort of when I started to read the articles for myself and just have discussions with Dad. It was pretty clear, like, maybe I'm not as conservative as him. The story I tell about from my childhood was always the day I learned how to parallel park from my dad. We were on like a pretty main street here in Melbourne, and we're just parallel parking. And Dad picked that time to argue with me over gay marriage.
I love Bolt's childhood stories. They're so good.
Because halfway through, I genuinely forgot how to parallel park. I was 16 years old, and there's like 15 cars behind us, and Dad's just going, well, don't you think there's a bit of a slippery slope in that if you... I'm just like, Dad, which is the next indicator I need to press? So yeah, that's a bit of my childhood there. But yeah, it's good. Like, the common theme is you find the causes that you really believe in, and then it's such a privilege to come and work at a place where you just get to really fight for those causes in a very public sphere. I mean, like, if we, if we had a different job, it'd just be us getting really angry at a television. But we're like, and honestly, to the people that are members of the IPA that are in this chat right now, thank you so much for all of your support over the years, because I mean, we couldn't do this without you. We can't make the case for freedom. We can't make the case for free speech without the support of our members and donors. So, I mean, it's always really good to hang out with you on chats like this, see you guys at IPA events when, we're allowed to have events in 2025 or whatever it is. But yeah, we can't wait to see you there. And if you're not already a member of the IPA, we do have a membership offer for Friedman. Just let me get my note up. If anyone could store for me, that would be amazing.
Simon Brady just gave you one then, James. Did you set up?
I did not. That's not exactly stalling to bring me straight back into the conversation while I'm trying to find a note.
So,
but good try. So
what
I got the note
stuff,
now.
what other things about your childhood would you like
No,
to
that's
share?
again.
He's plugging membership, Pete. Hold your
That's
horses.
again looping me back into the conversation instead of padding for me. All right, but we are offering, if you're not a member of the IPA, if you're watching what we're talking about, if you're enjoying what's going on here, we are offering a very special membership deal for people here right now. Use the promo code Friedman at ipa.org.au/join. That's promo code Friedman. For $55, you get 12 months of IPA membership and receive a free signed copy of Dave Rubin's Don't Burn This book. I mean, a fair few of you would have seen Dave interview Ayaan Hirsi Ali earlier today. If you like that interview, if you like what Dave Rubin's about, and you like the IPA, great offer. Go to ipa.org.au/join to get your hands on it. Now, I saw another chat group. I saw another question a while back.
Jeremy M.
Yeah, so what does the IPA see minor parties such as Liberal Democrats in the mix? So where do we see them in the mix, given there's quite a strong alignment between LNP and IPA? Now, I guess philosophically there might be an alignment, but certainly we're not linked to them in any formal manner, but I see what you're saying. But so what are the roles of the minor parties? I think I'll start with Pete because he's on my screen.
Oh, geez. That's a tough one. It's Jeremy M. Jeremy, you can answer this in text form as we talk about this. But are you the Jeremy M. we met at an event who said that they listened to the Young IPA podcast in class? Because that to me was like, life ambition unlocks that I was sort of
spamming. That a few times, I think.
Spam the use. That wouldn't be me. Okay, fair enough, Jeremy M. Obviously not Jeremy M. What was the question again? Minor parties.
What are the role of minor parties? Where's the LNP at?
Oh, you're great if they're in government. I'm not that up to speed with party politics, to be honest, James. I think that they provide a bit of a like the Greens sort of put a bit of a green tinge on government policy. So the what do they call it? DLP. They're a great. The more seats they can win, the better. LDP even very good for you, Jeremy. LDP.
Yeah.
So,
still living in the early 2000s in more ways than one.
So I don't know where they're at the moment though. Like what they're strong in Victoria. What are they like in other states?
Cool. Bring in Gideon. So what are the role of the minor parties?
Yeah, look, it's a good question, and you're right, Bolt. We're not aligned to any political party. In fact, I certainly bash the Liberal Party more times than I would like to, because they break my heart so many times over so many issues. What are the roles of the minor parties? Well, I'm a big admirer of the LDP. David Leyonhjelm is one of the greatest pro-liberty heroes in the history of Australia. And the guys like David Limbrick in the State Upper House here in Victoria do a great job. Aaron Stonehouse, another bloody legend. But there's always this vexed question of, if you're a libertarian, you really believe, do you join the LDP or do you join, for example, the Liberal Party and try to change it from the inside? I'm somebody who's, again, I joined the Liberal Party years and years and years ago when I was a teenager, and I've stayed in, not particularly active, but I think there is something to be said for keeping the bastards honest inside the party machine. And indeed, the party room. I mean, the Liberal Party elects a lot of great libertarians like Amanda Stoker, James Patterson, Nicole Flint.
Tim Wilson's done some good things.
Tim Wilson's done some amazing things. Sadly, they're all on the backbench. Make of that what you will. But look, the LDP has a role, and they should keep running. And when they run, they should win, because when they're in upper houses, and it always is upper houses, they do really, really good work. And as a side note, I'll be the first to admit that I've been tempted to send my resignation letter into the Liberal Party and print the LDP membership form many, many times.
Dara, what do you reckon the role of LDP and other minor parties are?
I'm a supporter of the LDP, not formally, at least not anymore. I'm not a member of any political party at the moment, which is actually really, really good. And I think that is actually kind of the role of a think tank like the IPA, is not to pick a side per se. We're picking principles, as opposed to, engaging in the minor political squabbles that happen within parties. So I really feel like, it's actually really nice to be out of that mix in a way, and be able to, talk about principles and support whatever party is, encapsulating those principles and bringing them to the fore, or whatever, specific politicians there might be. So yeah, I think there's a role for them, whether they'll become bigger or whatever the political landscape which is going to pan out in the future. I'm not going to predict, but I think our role as a think tank, as the IPA, is actually just to espouse the principles and support whatever whatever political players actually want to take on those principles.
Yeah, I've never been a member of a political party at all. I think, I can't remember if it was Pete or Gideon that said this, but, never trust politicians, are only going to break your heart. So I've never really wanted to, sign away a membership fee and stuff like that. What I do like, though, and this is going into the Australian political system, I do like that there are these minor parties that, like the LDP and, I'd even say the Greens and some of the other people, because what happens in America and some of these other countries is the entire legislative agenda can switch on one day in November or on just one election day. And I like the idea that you always have these parties that can stop some of the worst pieces of legislation coming through. And I just, I really like the fact that exists. So, I work at a think tank. I'm going to tweet and say things on podcasts that I like, and there's not going to be a political party out there that agrees with 100% of what I say. So therefore, probably don't ever see myself becoming a member. Might check it too, unless anyone's seen another good question. We might check it.
No.
Thank you, Pete. So I'll chuck it to another question. So we had a Generation Liberty panel earlier today, which I thought was really good, talking about how to talk to young people about liberty. If you're a young person here, you're not already a member of Generation Liberty, it's a really great organisation that we've got going. So head on over to ipa.org.au or like the Facebook page, Generation Liberty. Get involved, because we will be doing so many events in campus when universities are back on face-to-face learning. It's a great organisation. So Gideon and Dara, you're members of our policy team. You've done, certainly Gideon, you've done a whole lot of media. You guys think about how to talk, you guys think about these really important ideas. How have you found is the best way to talk to young people out there?
I think I'd start, I guess, by making the point that the right, such as it is, hasn't done a great job of talking to young people for a long time, and there are many reasons for that. But chiefly, they don't talk to young people about issues that are particular to them for the most part. For example, personal freedom, vaping, nanny state issues. The Liberal Party has been absolutely woeful on almost all of those issues, barring, of course, the courageous backbench revolt around vaping that occurred some time ago. But also, if you're a young person, you've got a, 5-figure HEX debt, you're trying to put a deposit down in the house, a Bernie Sanders type will come along and say, oh, we'll give you free education and free housing. And then we'll chime in and say, no, that's socialism. And they'll kind of say, and there's a point that's been made by another speaker at the conference on a great movie called Another Way. For those that haven't seen it, it's on YouTube. But we'll say, no, that's socialism. I'll say, well, great. Socialism's great. I want the house and the free education. What we need to say is the reason your house is so expensive is because of government controls on land releases that drive up the cost of housing. The reason that your house is so expensive is because of red tape that makes it a nightmare to build a bloody house to begin with. The reason you don't have any money is because your taxes hoovered up and then pissed up against the wall on God knows what by some bureaucrat who thinks he knows better how to spend your money better than you do. The reason you are deep in HEX debt is because rent seekers galore have created this perverse arms race in terms of the need to go out and get a piece of paper with your name on it, bequeathed to you by a unionised workforce in order to get your foot into the door in terms of getting a job in this country. I think we need to be better at saying, look, we believe in giving you the cheap house and the affordable education as much as Bernie Sanders. The difference is we actually aren't full of the proverbial when we talk about how to deliver it to you. And I think it's about the problem we have obviously is it's a much more complicated message than just saying, the government, rich people should just pay tax and so the government can give you stuff for free, but we have to try.
Pete and Dara, so how have you found, because Gideon brought up some really good things there, which is there's a lot of disaffected people coming out of colleges, unable to get a job or unable to get the job that they wanted. And they just look at the system that exists and go, well, it didn't work for me. It's not working for all these other people. Let's build a new system. But So how do we get those people to think about liberal and libertarian ideas? I'll start with Paul.
Okay.
Before anyone answers, sorry to interrupt here. This is from the Sydney office. Just want to let you know we're approaching the last 10 minutes. So please, your best and strongest points, bring them out now, and
Lucas was playing.
Bring it to a close. Thank you.
Am I meant to be making good points? Gee, I didn't
So
realise that.
Pete, the exact instruction was your best and most worthy point. Have the 4 points.
Pressure's on.
I have a point.
So, the first thing is I'd say don't. We're in a bit of a habit of like sort of referring to people as stupid. Like if they, they say I'm a socialist because I think socialism is compassionate. And you go, oh, geez, how stupid are they? Like you've got to treat people like they're coming from their position. They've thought about that. They're not stupid. Don't just laugh at them. You have to explain to them why that's the incorrect position to have or why that doesn't work. Play to people's emotions as well. Like we're much more rational on our side of politics because I just think people that support this side of politics are more rational people, but you should play to people's emotions. Like I try to do that when I'm doing Sky. I try and talk about, people's emotions a bit. So the other person has to be like the left-wing Australia Institute person has to be the one that's rational and seems like the bastard and I'm like, the nice guy. But the third thing is it's a volume thing. Like I did a talk to high school kids the other day where I just absolutely spammed them with pre-market dreams, and they were like, "Oh, that's interesting. What did you mean by that?" Blah, blah, blah. But then they're going to hear 100 times the other message. So we have to get realistic about the fact that the institutions that dispense education in the West are full of socialists. We have to somehow get some people in there that aren't like that, so that people actually hear our message. Because you hear it once and you think about it and then you just move on. You've got to hear it again and again and again and again, and we have to get realistic about that fact. And I don't know what the answer is, but maybe it's supporting teachers that aren't socialists or something like that. But that's the key thing, the education system.
Well, Dara, you talked about how University of Melbourne was a bit of a wake-up call for you, and how University of Melbourne was a wake-up call for you, and talking to your fellow students about that all the stuff. So, I mean, you've got experience on the ground, so maybe you could talk to us about how to talk about liberty to university students.
I'm going to give it a little bit of an optimistic note because I think it's actually almost you're a bit of a rebel now if you're a conservative or right wing on university campus. This is kind of a countercultural almost. So and combine that with the amount of resources that are online, and this is what eventually. The fact that when I was, questioning my left-wing leanings, that I could go online and there was the likes of now, Dave Rubin, who's, massively successful talk show, or, Joe Rogan podcast, who have, all these different thinkers coming on, which is like one of the main, most listened to podcasts ever. And I have, I'm often talking to people and going, oh, I listen to Joe Rogan and, he's a bit right-wing and a bit niche. And like, it's like, the number one podcast. You're not the only one that is thinking these things. You're not the only one that is being a dissident. It is actually incredibly mainstream. It's just the question of, getting around these institutions like the schools and so on that have been, they've stacked the decks for so long. But the fact that they've stacked the decks for so long means that people are looking for fresh ideas, new ideas, and these ideas are actually fresh and new if you've been taught, propaganda basically for most of your school life. So I think to some degree it is actually there's a note of optimism, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm going to share a story from my university experience, because I was definitely one of the guys that was just like, look, keep your head down, don't kick up a fuss, because you're not going to win anyone over, so just get the marks and go. And then year 2 or 3, I just thought, you know what, this sucks. I'm not enjoying uni. I'm letting bad people win over hearts and minds. I'm just going to start saying what I want. And it was this one shoot about the French Revolution. And this one guy piped up saying that the French Revolution terror didn't go far enough. They were so close to building the utopian society that would have guaranteed freedom and guaranteed prosperity forever. But the counter-revolutionaries got control back. And I just made the point, like, how many people executed genuinely thought themselves to be counter-revolutionaries the moments before someone grabbed them on the shoulder? And like, how long could he guarantee that he would be okay in a society like that? And it stopped him. And there were 8 other people who hadn't said a word all semester that I could see nodding. And you just think, like, when you're in a university tute and everyone's spruiking these ideas, really look at if it is actually everyone. Because usually it's 1 or 2 people and 11 people that just want to keep their head down. So you might actually be on level terms. There's a lot of people there who just do not want to kick up a fuss. And if you just talk about what you want to talk about, you might actually win them over, and they might be actually secretly agreeing with you. And then second, I think Gideon raised the point here, which is there's a lot of disaffected people coming out. I mean, especially in America, to a terrible job market, to a terrible, like, a culture that really is at odds with itself and odds with its own history. And it's not a place that you would want to be graduating into. And that is what people want to overturn. But the thing is, like, the culture that they have isn't a classically liberal one or a libertarian one. Like, which classical liberal would have bailed out the GFC or done all of the things to support gigantic industries and subsidies, which is what's holding America back in unemployment in so many different ways? Tell them that your version of society isn't the one that's going out right now. Like, this is this isn't where we want to be. And we're just as revolutionary as some other ones. But in our revolution, people don't die by the millions. I mean, people's lives actually improve. So get out there and talk to people would be my number one thing to say. Now, as far as I can see, we've got about 3 minutes before we get wrapped up. I've seen the Australian taxpayers guy back on the screen. I think he's giving me a thumbs up. So I don't know. I'll have a look here through any final questions, but does anyone have any final thoughts they want to share with people?
Join the IPA.
Join the IPA. I've got that waiting for me at the very end there.
On news.
All
Big
right,
thank you to our organisers for having
Read the
us.
Spectator. Yeah,
Yeah, very much so.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of questions about Dave Rubin, so I don't know if anyone wants to share their own thoughts about Dave Rubin.
Someone asked if the US was going to take over China.
The answer is no.
Yeah,
I think this will be like the Cold War. I think we will win it. Freedom always wins and central planning always fails. It might not happen in my lifetime, but it will happen.
Yeah, I'm an eternal optimist. I mean, these things can't go on forever. If you keep 1 billion people under under your thumb, like the Chinese government's doing with their own people, I think eventually it starts to crumble, it seems. Anyway, let's leave on a positive note. So, Pete, Gideon, what are we looking forward to in the future, I guess, like post-COVID world?
Can I just jump in here really quickly, because we do need to move on to the next session. However, you don't all have to leave. We will gladly enter the next phase where we unmute people and they're free to interact with each other. Speakers can stick around or you can leave as well. But since we do need to move on to the next breakout session, we will leave it here if that's all right.
Can I just make one final comment about the IPA's membership offer? It'll take about 45 seconds.
You may.
All right, so if you're not already a member of the IPA, if you have enjoyed what's been going on here, head on over to ipa.org.au/join. Use the promo code Friedman, and for 12 months, so you can receive an IPA membership for 12 months, just $55. Pete, do you want to put yourself on mute? Friedman, $55 for just 12 months of membership, and you receive a free signed copy of Dave Rubin's Don't Burn This book. So head on over to ipa.org.au/join. Sorry, take us through the next session, I guess.